Hello, welcome to my Lifestyle Chat channel. I'm talking about spiritual psychosis I had in 2008, and the next part I want to talk about is, so I'm talking about the onset of it, like when it first started to occur. And I think this was, if I'm right, I could be wrong, but if I'm right, I think this was about the day before I went into hospital. And basically, in my area where I live, there's a particular road, and it's like a, not a crossroads. Is it a crossroads? There's a roundabout. Yeah. And I was on the bus, and the the bus journey kind of comes down this road. It goes round the roundabout this way and then carries on down that way. And on this corner of the roundabout, there's a funeral director's store, shop, whatever you want to call it. And this next part I'm talking about. So I remember, so at this stage, I felt, I think, very much in my right mind. I didn't feel I was going off my head in any way. But yeah, I do remember this particular time, like I was sitting near the back of the bus, and there were a few people like at the front. I was upstairs, it was a double decker, and I was upstairs, and there was a few people sitting like at the front, ahead of me on the bus. And the day, and me, just the way that I was sitting there and how quiet it was, and just how quiet and how still the day felt, and the people in front of me, there just seemed to be this sort of somberness. And as the bus turned the corner and I saw like the funeral, no, I couldn't have been in my right mind, because yeah, I remember now, this is what I was thinking. As the bus turned the corner like this way and I saw the funeral director's like store there, it gave me this feeling like, it was like as if death had come upon all of us or something like this. It was so, the mood and the atmosphere, it was just so sort of like, I was just feeling like it's too quiet, and I felt as if I'd like crossed over, and like the people in front of me, as if they were like not living, like they were unalived, and as if I was in that realm of like the unalived. Oh yeah, I remember feeling like this. And as I said, this all happened in 2008. And what I want to say about this psychotic episode, if you've experienced anything like this, any type of episode in mental health, or these kinds of psychoses of the mind, yeah, especially when it's got like a spiritual nature, I think sometimes what happens, right, and let me know if you can relate, if you think this is true, right, what happens is like, you go into your spiritual form, your mind and your mental processes. I've talked obviously how I didn't sleep for so many nights, right? So it's like I was awake, but I was in like my dream-like state. So it's like what happens is like your perceptions around you, the way you're perceiving things is not in the natural. It's like you're perceiving things, but from your spiritual point of view and not your natural point of view. And because you're in this heightened spiritual awareness, what can happen, and what felt like happened to me in this experience, is all the timelines throughout history, they all get merged into one. So some of the things that you're experiencing, you're not understanding it at the time, but then later on, you're able to look back and remember that time. Oh yeah, I was going off my head, and that's how I was feeling. And sometimes sometimes you're actually having, you're being psychic. Yeah, your awareness is becoming so heightened. It's like you're having premonitions, but you don't realize at the time that your soul, your spirit, is preempting something. You're having actually like a premonition of what's to come. And I think that's what this feeling was when, as I said, I was sitting on the bus and I was just having this really like somber feeling, like, yeah, this is not normal. I feel like I've crossed over. And the best way that I can relate this for somebody to understand who hasn't had any kind of episodic thing going on mentally with them like this, it's literally like how, that time happened when we all had to get locked down, yeah, because of the virus. And nobody in the world could have anticipated that time, how how circumstances became in those 2 years when we all had to stay 6 feet apart from each other, not go outside, literally everywhere got shut down, and so many people were getting ill, and becoming unalived. And just how somber that was. If you can remember back to then, I think basically this how I was feeling, this part of my psychosis, I think I was actually having like a premonition of this time of what's to come, because that time, that era, with that virus and the lockdown, that's the feeling that it was. That's exactly how it was. Just so sort of like, just the atmosphere, how I was feeling was like, it's like I'm in another realm, you know, it's like I've crossed over to the other realm. That's how spiritually I was feeling. I was in tune with what was around me. Yeah, so, but like I said, I think this, I can't remember exactly, but I'm thinking, I think that was a day or a couple of days prior to me actually being hospitalised. So, the day that I was hospitalised, like I said, I was living with my sister and she brought me to the hospital because she had her own, had her own similar experiences prior to myself. So, I just, to be honest, I did, after a while, I did end up resenting, like, my sister for bringing me to the hospital, because I just think basically if I would have just got some sleeping tablets and been told to calm myself down, I would have been okay over the next, you know, weeks or months or whatever. But she obviously was just doing what she felt, you know, was necessary. So basically, because of my behaviour or whatever I was saying or however, she basically brought me to the hospital. And the day that I got to the hospital, I think we were sitting down in the waiting area, and I think I had a newspaper. I think I had a Metro newspaper, and I remember looking at the date. Just exactly how I felt was exactly like Marty McFly in that movie, Back to the Future, when there's a scene where he looks at the newspaper and he looks at the date and he's like, what time is this? What year is this? How can it be 1955? I remember looking at the date on the newspaper and thinking, we've just skipped a day. Like, say today is Thursday the 11th. Right? Yesterday, that meant yesterday was Monday the 10th. And that means tomorrow is going to be Friday the 12th. So I was looking at the date on the newspaper, and say today is Wednesday the 11th, but the newspaper was saying Thursday the 12th of September. And I'm looking at the newspaper date and I'm thinking, how can it be Thursday the 12th of September? Right, this means what happened to yesterday? What happened to Wednesday the 11th if we skipped a day? So that means in my mind, yesterday would have been Monday the 10th. Yeah, that was my first thing when I was reading this Metro newspaper. Like, I was feeling like we just skipped a day. And I was thinking, what happened to yesterday? Like, we've just skipped a day. And then when I was reading the actual article, it just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And not only did it not make any sense, it's like the words in the newspaper were all jumbled up. And not only were they just jumbled up, all the words were like, they just seemed really simplistic to me, like really baby language. And I remember sitting there in the waiting room, looking at the date, thinking, that's not the date. And then reading this thing and thinking, I don't understand this. I was thinking, why is the newspaper just writing absolute gobbledygook, jumbled up nonsense? And why is it in just this absolute baby language, like they're writing in the newspaper for babies? Yeah, I remember thinking this. But as I said, some things can be accounted for. And I know that I was having that feeling because, like I said, I just spent the last year and a half studying. And obviously when you're studying, you're reading all these books with these big words, you know, you've never come across these big, long words before. And I think that's what was going on, because, and obviously when you're writing your assignments, you know, so my vocabulary must have been being expanded. You know, my neuroplasticity was, you know, I was having neuroplasticity where my brain was like, obviously, I was intaking like new knowledge, like new information, and with that, my vocabulary was like extending as well. So then to go from reading all this quite academic, you know, really sort of like elongated, you know, big words in the textbooks, to then come read the newspaper, I think that's why I was having this thought, like, this is like baby language, because I'd gotten so used to, basically I was having like mind expansion. You know, this is what studying does, you know, it causes neuroplasticity. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm talking about spiritual psychosis, psychotic episode I had in 2008. Go back and watch the previous videos, and I'm going to carry on in my next video. I'm going to try to keep these videos quite short and sweet. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you've experienced anything similar, and let me know how the mental health professionals dealt with your case. Leave a comment, share, like the video, subscribe to my channel. I will see you in my next video.